Hello there, welcome to this video. And on this video, I'm going to be exploring the idea that most modern music is not music. Right, so I've been suffering with a cold. Flu-like symptoms have been apparent. And I'm quite breathless at the moment. So if you wonder why I'm even more breathless on this one, it is because of that. I'm not 100%. But even though I'm not 100%, I've decided to take on this very, very difficult set of thinking, right? So when I do these sorts of videos, I prime my head up with a couple of things ready to go. And then I surge in, and I don't know where I'm going. So if you want to know where I'm at with the answer of whether most modern music is not actually music, I don't know the answer yet. Let's see where we arrive now. So if you want to sit down, buckle up and join me on the journey, we can see whether some modern, not all of it, but some modern music is not actually music. Now, why do I think it might not be music? Well, I'll tell you why. If I was lucky enough to have a cuckoo clock in here, and as I was talking, the cuckoo clock erupted from his home and did his little cuckoo sound, right? The question is whether that cuckoo sound is a piece of music or not, or is it just a sound? Now, one of the concepts I've been getting into on this channel deeply recently is the idea of the frame, that what makes a piece of music is the fact that a human being has put a frame around it. At the moment, you are looking at a video of me. There is audio here and there is video here. And the reason why you're watching this is because I have decided to hit record, and visually the art is happening within here, and orally the sound that you're hearing is happening within the confines of this video, of the sounds I made with my mouth, right, when we hit the record. Now, I'm pretty sure that that concept, which I have been promoting on this channel as a really good place to start, and it has this idea that music is just sound that we've decided to feature. And we have ways of featuring it, and that is what we in art will be the frame, and then there's the equivalent of the frame in music. Now, I'm pretty sure that even though there's a frame around this, me talking to you is still not music, is it? I haven't done something in this video to make it seem like it's music. All right, so shall we try and do that? I'll move over to here, because actually that camera is positioned very beautifully for me to sort of be able to come over here, pick some brushes up and create a composition. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to present to you a composition called Brushes and Words. Thank you very much. Sleeping bag. Tomato ketchup. Scamper. Elbow. Handbag. Finito. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. So, I just stated, because I wondered how I was going to make that to be a composition. Now, it's because I stated it was, wasn't it? That's part of it. It's like I said, this is a composition. Now, I know you sat there thinking, this is all too esoteric. Where does this come from? Why do people think like this? Well, there was a shift. There was an artistic shift that happened in the 20th century. And the shift that we should really focus on for the purpose of this discussion was the composition that was created in 1952 by John Cage, called 4 minutes and 33 seconds. A very, very famous piece of music. Now, this is a very interesting piece of music because it challenges the audience. And I'm sure there's many people here that will be shouting, that's not actual music. Now, this has cropped up again recently because an artist has gaffer taped a banana to the wall, and it's just sold for millions and millions, something like $6 million or something like this. It's a huge amount. Whatever amount you think it's going to be, it's bigger. You know, it's like it just skyrocketed. Now, nothing's been done to the banana. It will rot away. It will be rotten, gone by now. It's an ephemeral thing. The title of the piece is called Comedian. Now, me, for my sins, I was trained originally as a painter and a fine artist. And I got taught all this stuff. I was trained up to think, you know, what is art? What is the meaning of art? Am I making art when I don't make art? Or do I only make art when I am making art? And all these things that we would discuss, you know, as artists. Artists are a different breed to musicians. And I think that informed me of thinking about art and music in a different way. I approached this YouTube channel in a little bit of a sort of Dadaist, you know, performance art thing going on. I've got a little bit of that going on. But I do it with my tongue firmly in my cheek. A lot of the performance artists I know that would come up out and do strange things like this, when you got to talk to them, they're actually really funny people that actually just liked coming up with bizarre, strange things and trying to do the audience's head in. I like to try and do the audience's head in. I also like to poke fun of myself and all these types of things. And that's what the meaning of it is, you know. So if you're sat there going, that piece of music you just did, Andy, well, it was a bit rubbish, wasn't it? Well, was it? Were you entertained by it? You know, so what John Cage did is similar to this banana thing. The banana, the title of the banana is called Comedian. And because I have that sort of training, as soon as I looked at it, I went, well, actually, there's more here than there seems to be, right? The obvious thing is the banana is going to rot away. So this is ephemeral. So it's not just some weird thing that's been stuck into an art gallery, you know, like a pair of shoes or, you know, somebody's glasses or something. At least those will remain solid for a while, but this banana's going to rot away, isn't it? And so if you buy it, I mean, the only thing you can really do of any use is to eat it. And the billionaire who's bought it, that's his plan, is to eat it. But the fact it's called Comedian, a comedian is designed to make you laugh. And a banana makes you laugh because you slip on it. Whereas the gaffer tape is something that's sticky. So we have the idea of slipperiness and stickiness embodied in this one object, with the idea that this is there to make you laugh. This is there to make you smirk, right? So you have two opposites. It's almost like you've got a duality. And that duality could well be the duality of seriousness and funniness, right? Stickiness and slipperiness. And the slipperiness is the funny bit. Slipping over slippery things, not being able to grasp things, not being able to get our hands on truth. Right? And when we can't quite get our hands on truth, one of the ways we react is to laugh. Right? But the stickiness is when we've actually grasped something. We go out into the world and we try and grasp things. And certain things we do grasp, and certain things we can't grasp at. And the things we can't grasp at, we could call, you know, everything, or we could call God, or we could call the universe, or we could call it the infinite. And those things, when you're faced with it, right? When you're faced with those things and you listen to a joke, what a joke does is it confounds you, because it gives you two alternative answers at the same time. You know, there's two things there and they usually link to morality. There's this idea of disgust often, and then not disgust banging up against each other. Right, that's usually the bottom of this joke. And I say the word bottom because it's funny. And we laugh at the word bottom because we know we shouldn't really be thinking about it, because it's the dirty part of us. It's the lower thing. And so this idea of the infinite and the low is all combined in the laugh, the grimace, where we don't understand the world. And then the sticky thing that grabs hold of that and forces it onto the wall, silver gaffer tape. The very thing that when you comedian gets on stage, that the texts bring on. If you're a musician like me, gaffer tape or duct tape has a very special place, and it fixes absolutely everything. So within that banana, we have the great dialectic personified, and it makes the point that the thing that unifies this is us laughing. All we can do with the fundamental existential angst of our existence, that we are ephemeral like that banana, is to laugh. Now, do I believe any of that I just said? No. I got trained. I've been trained to do that. But as I've gone through that argument, I come out thinking, well, that piece of art that's pretty heavyweight, isn't it? It's there. Now, is it there because I found it to be there? And then I find myself getting drawn into the same argument again, and we seem to go around in a circle. And this is something that art does. This is the conceptual aspect of art, right? There's a thing that art does which is very visceral, it's emotional, it affects our feelings. And when that's lacking from art, right, when you go to the avant-garde, which is usually going to the two extremes, when you go to the very conceptual end, people start to go, well, where's the actual enjoyment in this? I'm not going to sit down and, look at that banana. Well, you could, though, couldn't you? It's a beautiful thing, a banana is. It's an incredible, miraculous thing, really. A beautiful natural thing that grows in nature up against a man-made. I think what art does is deal with dialectics. It deals with these opposite things, yin and yang, and the thesis and antithesis. And it tries to arrive at an aesthetic, which is an ethical conclusion. Now, this is precisely what's going on with 4 minutes and 33 seconds. So my thesis here is this, that when we look at 4 minutes and 33 seconds, this troublesome but incredibly influential track, the established view of it is that John Cage created this composition where he carved out 4 minutes of 33 seconds worth of space. And you sit down and he forces you to listen to it like you would listen to a piece of music. But there's nothing there because the musicians aren't doing something. But that's the mistake. And the profound realization when you listen to 4 minutes and 33 seconds is actually that there is something there. There's ambient sound. It's always there. So I'm not going to do 4 minutes and 33 seconds, but I will do a minute's worth now. Wasn't that a brilliant piece of music there? Did you enjoy it? And so the idea with 4 minutes, 33 seconds, the point it's trying to make, and you see how meta, do you see how postmodern my YouTube channel is? Some people would feel like they're doing something avant-garde if they did that on the YouTube channel. But here we just do it like this. Just like that. You switch on and before you know it, you're in this postmodern, post-existentialist angst world of what is all this, what's the world about? And here I am being forced to listen to this silence, but the silence is never there. There's no such thing as actual silence. There's these sounds, there's this music. Does it become music because we put the frame around it? Just because Andy marked a minute of his video to stand in silence and force me to focus on the sounds that are around me? Yes, they're there, but is that really music? I actually think that what John Cage did, and the reason why this is a piece of genius work, is this. That is just the front door. That's the door you open. When you're in the room, there's something else going on, right? Now, I am now going to draw upon another avant-garde piece of art or music, and it's Terry Riley's tune in C. Now, Terry Riley's tune in C has the same in common with John Cage's 4 minutes and 33 seconds in that it is a composed piece of music. In other words, it exists on a piece of paper. We will return to 4 minutes and 33 seconds instructions, recipe, or whatever you want to call it. But in C, basically has around about 40 phrases that are in C. Very simple, right? There's someone keeping time, and I think they keep time with a C. And so, what does a C sound like? I haven't got perfect pitch. So there's a C. So someone will keep time. And they'll start there, and then the musicians, and it doesn't matter what you play, you can play any instrument. This composition will cope with any number of musicians. And you look at the first place, the first phrase, and you play it, and you play it as long as you like. And then when you get a bit fed up, you move on to the next phrase. And then there's a whole set of rules. So if certain people have moved on to the next phrase, then you need to move on to the next phrase. So what happens is all the musicians slowly creep their way quite randomly through these phrases. When you analyse the phrases go through a tonality, which is the tonic. It then moves to the subdominant, and then it moves to the dominant. So we have the basic cadence. But the thing is, it can take about an hour to get through this. And it literally does sound like... It's like this. And it goes on for ages and ages. Now, when I first discovered this, I realised that score was quite cool for students because there's 40 short phrases and the students could learn to read those phrases. And then once they learned to read it, then they could operate within an ensemble with a conductor taking them through this. And it gave them that experience even though they weren't classical musicians. And this worked for rock musicians. Now, this is one of the genius things of Terry Riley's in C. It has an incredible educational and communal aspect to it. Anyway, so we rehearsed this up, and this tune takes about an hour to get through. And we have to perform it. So I decided on one of the shows to perform it, and all the parents come in, and they're used to seeing the students getting up and playing, a Nirvana song or something that's more accessible. And the students walk out all dressed in suits, and they bow, and they start up on this hour-long piece. And I'm quite tense because I'm thinking, I wonder what they think of it. And I wonder what I think of it. And I'm sat there going, whereabouts are they? They're only up to about the 7th phrase. We've got 40 of these or something to get through. And I find myself quite tense. And I start to examine what's going on. Because I'd put up some video to make it a little bit more entertaining in the background. I'd put up the film Power Katsu. So this is running in the background. And at a certain point, around about half an hour in, there was a picture of some sort of Buddhist monk sat deep in contemplation like that. So this guy sat there, and the music's going, no, no, no. It's got this, and it's hypnotic. And I thought, I'm fighting the hypnotic aspect, aren't I? I'm not like that monk, am I? I'm stressed. I have taken this situation here that we're in, and I've decided to decode it in a way that's very, very stressful. I have decided to see it's like and basically I thought, I'm in this thing right now, listening to this piece of music, and basically all I'm doing is waiting for it to be over. And yet this piece of music is going to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I'm waiting to get to the end. Why? And I remember thinking, it's because I feel like I need to get this period of time over and done with. I'm seeing this as a job. I'm seeing it as something that has to be achieved. I'm not in the moment. The Buddhist monk's in the moment, and he's fighting or succeeding in being in the moment. I can't do it. And I remember having this thought, while they were playing it, I was thinking, it does sound pretty. It's a very beautiful sound. I'm in a comfy chair in the warm. There's beautiful imagery in front of me. I'm surrounded by people I know, and we're involved in a communal thing. What is there not to like? Why can't I just embrace this moment right now? And at that point I did. And by the time I'd reached this different mindset, the tune was drawing to an end, as though it was perfectly composed. And I sort of sat there going, oh my God, Terry Riley's a bit of a genius, because on that piece of paper, he had loaded all that in on that piece of paper. And I believe that John Cage has done the same thing. Now, I've seen John Cage's 4 minutes and 33 seconds many a time, but I've never had the revelation that I had listening to Terry Riley's in C, albeit played by my students who were not virtuoso musicians. And that was another thing that was really surprising as well, because it still worked. And you start to think, God, Terry Riley has built into this piece of paper. That's his composition. He's finished it. But that's done. There you go. Hands it out, and you read it, and musicians can start up. And when they start up into that composition, it has a revelatory aspect to it, and a specific revelatory aspect that I'm pretty sure Terry Riley was aware of. And I'm pretty sure the person that presaged him in this awareness would have been John Cage, right? This was 1952. I'm always shocked that was the time that 4 minutes and 33 seconds was done. It's so ahead of its time. Postmodernism as an idea is going to emerge through the 50s and the 60s, but it's not really going to kick in until the 80s. And one of the postmodernist philosophers is going to be a guy called Lacan. And he approached philosophy in an almost like psychoanalytic point of view. And he became very interested in desire. Now, what he did was to take desire and wants and separate them and put wants within desire. So the desire is an overarching thing. Now, what I was suffering from in that Terry Riley thing was desire, because we're not talking about desire in the usual sense. The desire, because you find somebody attractive, or you want to eat a big cake. It's the thing you're aiming at achieving. It's the thing that motivates you to achieve something. It's what places you in the past and the future at the same time. Okay, and I think that John Cage was trying to do this with the nature of his composition. So let's go back to John Cage's 4 minutes 33 seconds, and then once we've gone through this heavy philosophy, let's see how this applies to modern music, because I think there's something quite profound there. And I thought this morning, and I haven't got to it yet. I decided, because this is what I try and do, is I try and have the thought on camera. I'm trying to ride there, and I know it's there, and I'm going to walk to it in a minute. But let's just go through what 4 minutes and 33 seconds is. So it's not really 4 minutes and 33 seconds, because it's in 3 movements. And each movement isn't 4 minutes and 33 seconds divided up into thirds. Each movement, they're all different lengths, and they're very specific. It's not like what I just did, which was a minute, which meant I could look at the clock that's running, and it happened as I got to that point very, very luckily, thank you very much, that it was just coming up to 56, 57, 58, and I could just say now and have a 0, and then I could sit there, and I waited and wait, and then when I looked up, it was very easy to spot when that time period would end, right? But with 4 minutes and 33 seconds, it's awkward. One of them's quite long. I think the middle section's quite long, and the one thing is quite short. So when you watch a performance of it, you'll have an ensemble of musicians. You have to have a conductor. He will put a watch on, or stopwatch, and he will start it, and they will sit there for that first specific time, which is something like 1 minute 32 seconds. It's awkward. And so the musicians are faced with this thing of sitting still, but their job is not just to sit there and do nothing. They've got to carve this space out, and it's quite involved. And again, it's in 3. The same as Terry Riley. We've got this cadence. We've got the thing that goes out. We've got the big one in the middle that goes to the dominant, which is the bit where you're really slogging through, and then it's going to come back. And I wonder whether this idea of the psychological travel is embedded in that 3-part, because I believe art deals with the dialectic, but when the dialectic comes together in a profound piece of art, it creates something which is like a trinity. It's the law of 3. And I come back to this over and over again. So it's very interesting that the 3 is there. The thing that from an esoteric point of view, is where all things spring from. This is the idea of the number 3. So there's these 3 parts, and maybe this is like a dialectic. Maybe it's thesis, antithesis, and then synthesis. Maybe there is a psychological thing that is specific that John Cage is trying to take us through with this piece of music. So what actually happens, the musicians, if you go onto YouTube and Google 4 minutes 33 seconds, and you'll see a performance of it. There's a quite good one with a full orchestra. So the conductor comes out and he puts his stopwatch down, and they're all ruffling about, and he does this, and he brings his baton up, sees the clock, and stops. And the piece has begun. And they all sat there motionless. And it's like attention. Now, I have shown this to students where I haven't even told them what it is. I'm just saying, have a look at this classical piece of music, put the video on, and they see this orchestra, the conductor comes up to say there's a score in front of them, and he lifts it, and when their baton goes, that first one, they're going, what's going on? What's going on? Are they going to play anything? What are they going to do now? What's actually happening? I don't get it. They're not playing. Musicians usually play at this point. That is part 1. Thesis. They're not playing. Right? And then after a minute, quite a short amount of time, the conductor stops and they go, ooh, and they shake themselves out at their performance. And the thing I love is the natural comedian. Ooh, now that's weird. Art's a strange thing. 3 pieces of art I've looked at here. Soldier on, Andy. If there's something at work here that you don't understand, don't try and understand it. So the musicians, they naturally become comedic at this point, and they'll go, oh, that was really hard to play, like that. And what that does is the audience go, oh, they were not playing because this first movement's over, and now they've reacted and they're not playing. So what happens next? And the conductor goes, oh, we're going into part 2 now, right? And part 2 goes on, and the audience, like, this is the long one. They go, I get it now. They're not playing. And if they're like erudite, intellectual types, they'll be going, yes, I can understand what's going on here. There's a conceptual aspect of this at work. I understand it now. The musicians aren't playing. It's like the antithesis to what we would expect in such a situation. You've got those there. And then all the normal people going, bloody hell. They're not playing their instruments. This is bloody saff, this is. But the point is, at that point, everybody now gets that nobody's playing. But this time it goes on for a long time. So you get to the point where that thought runs out. They're not playing, are they? They're not playing. Can you believe it? Not playing. I'll tell my missus, but I can't talk. We all can't talk, can we? That's the other thing. Everyone's involved. The audience is involved as well. Shouldn't really say anything. I might cough. You know, when you watch this on the TV, when they do this, there's always someone that goes like this, right? But everyone knows. They're all in on it now. Second movement. They're, yeah. Can't. I'd say something. Oh, they're not playing, are they? It's weird. They're not playing. That bloke keeps coughing, doesn't he? He's coughing. I mean, it's not really silence, is it? It's not silence at all. I mean, now everyone's gone really quiet. I'm starting to hear a lot of things. It's like there's a sound in here. What's that? Is that some sort of machine sound going on in here? And the weird thing is as you knew, as we got to discuss this, some really strange noises emerged in this video in the background. And also the sun is now coming out and taking my face and doing all this weird stuff to it, you know, which is drawing attention to the aesthetic aspects of this, you know. And what does this all mean? Where is the art? Is the art in the intention of the artist, or is the art in the fact that things happen when artists do their thing? That's the second one. People then get to a realization that there is sounds. I think that's why the second one goes on for so long. And then it stops and they shake themselves. I say, bloody hell, this is weird. Is there another one? And then they drop into the third one. And on the third one, I believe, rather than having just the revelation that you have gone, oh my God, any sound could be a sound. That's what the composer's trying to tell us. The thing that everyone reports. I think it's much more to do with desire. And I think there's an aspect of it which gets you to surrender to the now, to face yourself, face your desires, face your wants, face your fears, and surrender to the thing you're in at the moment, which actually has a piece of music. Every moment has a piece of music. Now, I became aware of this when, as a young man, I wanted to be able to meditate, and I'm not very good at meditating because my brain's always going like 1 billion miles an hour. But and so it's like, I can't do this, I can't do that. Later on, I have found that meditating with other people, where you've got someone leading the way, is a lot better. But there was one meditational method that I found was really useful for me as a younger man. You lie down, close your eyes and listen, and you name the sounds as you hear them. I can hear some distant footsteps. Could you hear that? Maybe a couple of footsteps. I can hear the sound of my ears wrecked from having this cold, and they're literally going whilst I'm talking to you. But that was the thing. And he said, you sit there, it's like this super sense emerges, and suddenly you're engulfed in the detail and reality of the situation you're in. And I think that's what 4 minutes 33 seconds does. But there's certain aspects of this that I want to draw your attention to, right? The sounds are real. The sounds are happening in the world when you're there, right? The sounds are being sort of created by the performance. We're in a performance, and that performance has been demarked. And within the realms of that, we as the audience are partaking in that, and the musicians are partaking in it, and there's a to and fro going on. And when you add all these things up, you start to go, if John Cage was making this point that every sound is a piece of music, but is that what he's saying? Or is he saying within the context of this composition, there are very specific conceptual ideas that I am trying to get across, and they are to do with our desires and our fears and how we exist outside the time frame, and how we're obsessed by time, and this idea of a triptych of time with these realizations, so you can actually see 3 states of existence as we go through. And is there, in the construction of this by John Cage, a very specific outcome? Okay? And actually, we're foolish to think it just means that every sound is music. All right? So before John Cage made this point, we existed in an art world that was very specific. And in that world, paintings had very strict rules of what was right, what was wrong. What was a landscape painting? What was a portrait painting? What should it contain? If you put certain symbols in, what those symbols contained, the techniques, everything was sort of measurable in a way. And so in terms of music had certain qualities. There was the instruments that created those sounds, and each instrument had a timbre and a range. And they played notes, and those notes were derived from the chromatic scale, which had gone through a historical sort of journey to arrive where it's at. And you could create chords, you could create, from the scales, create chords, dyads, and then by applying rhythm you could create melodies, and then these musicians could play these different instruments and weave these timbres and these melodies together to create this sort of harmonic structure on an overriding structure that was provided by the composition that was on paper that you had to follow in a certain way or it didn't work. And all those rules make you feel this is music now, we're doing music. Now John Cage sort of overturns that, but I don't know whether the real thing the real point he's making is a beautiful orchestra playing beautiful music is wonderful. And it contains the emotional and it contains this sort of structural, conceptual aspect at the same time. But if we move over to the conceptual and become very conceptual, we can move away from these emotional elements, right? Isn't that really the shock? That within the context of perfection, the form, the grid, the idea, the concept, the thing that holds it together, the intellectual part of the art, we can allow in these sounds. So if you are making a tune about war and you add explosions into your composition, those explosions now become part of the music because of the relevance of the overriding concept of the piece. Now, once we make that, now we start to get quite a demarked differentiation between something just being pure sound, right, and then he thinks a piece of music, is that there's the intention there, and the intention comes from the piece, doesn't it? Now, if I make a piece of art like I'm trying to now, and I see this as art, I don't see this as philosophy, I don't see this as information, I don't see that I'm like trying to give you facts. What I'm doing is I'm doing something very specific in here, and I became very aware that even though this seems very reduced in the actual aesthetic elements of it, and you think, well, you just listen to me talk, all this stuff is going on. And I'm very interested in my channel in exploring how, when you go on a journey like this, that actually what's happening aesthetically, which I'm not in control of, I'm in control of certain elements, and you've seen that in this video. I did a composition, I was in control of that, right? But all the things that have been happening around in this, I'm not in control with. It all weaves in. And I think one of the things that art makes us realize is that to see yourself as the artistic totally in control, you know, the master, the auteur that is in control, is to see ourselves as being at the center of the universe. And the universe is all around us, and we are at the center of it. It's like the subjective experience. When we try and explore truth, what a scientist does is that they withdraw from that experience and they try and get what we could call a God's eye view. And God's eye view is entirely objective. And then once we get an objective view of the universe, we are filled with the sublime feeling of awe when we have to confront the infinite. And that is a good way of defining what God is. And within that, we become a speck. And what happens when you make a piece of art like this is those two elements, the thing of being a speck and the whole world, the thing of being a subject and an object to the two things that are brought together. And perhaps the thing that makes something musical is to do with that. Now, we come to the crux of it, and the thought I had this morning, which I'm now about to explore. Have we, in error, handed over music from the realm of being music to the realm of just being a sound effect? So when I make these videos, I became very aware of another concept. We're moving on to a new concept now, everybody. I started to use some of the music that you can get for free off websites like Pixabay. I use a lot of this footage. I use photographs from this. It's all free. You don't have to pay for it. So say if you wanted a piece of incidental music, you go, right, horror music, scary, tense, and then you've got a whole bunch, you go, oh, I'll have that, and then you drop it in the bottom of your video, and once you add it in, then that piece of music goes, oh, that's great. Now that's not my piece of music, right? But it's part of my piece of art. But the actual music stuff, I've gone and grabbed it like there, we go, banged, right? And what happened is that these rotten people, right, what they do is they go on these websites like Pixabay and they write this tune and they give it you for free, but they embedded it this thing which will have the copyright of your video. right? And when you make this mistake and then suddenly you realise, oh, I've got to put that video up, and it's all going to the person who owns this track. The video's an hour long, and they've claimed the whole, because you can do all this. This is the economic part of art, or if you want to call it art. So I thought, I'm not going to use those anymore. The sound effects, however, are not music. If I want to, or I want to, all this sort of stuff, and you'll notice, usually for comedic effects, I will drop every now and then a sound effect. Now, you're not going to get anything on this because this video is pure and raw. This video has literally had no editing. That's my concept here. This is just a performance. I've walked in and I've actually put the camera up quite high and I'm stood so I can perform. The other reason is so I can keep warm because I don't feel very well, right? So I'm performing to you, but some videos I'll use sound effects, and the sound effects aren't copyrighted. And then you get to a grey area. You could go like tribal drum beat, and you find this thing, but it's not copyrighted because people see it more as a sound effect. And I start to go, well, I'm differentiated between sound effects and music. Okay, now, if you take that idea and you take this idea of the conceptual and the visceral, and you take all the idea of this dialectic and the object and subject and, being the total universe within yourself and all these, if you put this dialectic and you ask yourself, that's what's going on, right? At some point, we handed over music making to the machines. Now I'm here. I think my thesis that I can now word very simply that I'm trying to discuss here is this. When we hand music making over to the machine, does it transform the other way? Like the frame, and all the things we've discussed, all the things John Cage, it turns this noise into music. But if we sample somebody playing an instrument, or we sample something from a piece of music, or we get a drum machine to play that drum machine, are we just handing it back to the realm of sound? And the reason why it just now merely becomes sound and not music is because the intention is lost. Now, this really is interesting because modern music making has changed. It's much more about your choices. And this is what people argue is where the art is. They go, the art is the choice. If I take, Clyde Stubblefield's drum beat and Chris Squire's bass line, and I take, Django Reinhardt's guitar part and Ella Fitzgerald's vocals, and I fit them all on top of each other and hit play, I've created that. That's my composition. That's me. And that is what art is. And a whole bunch of people have argued. I've seen whole documentaries trying to argue that this now becomes art, and we're all foolish for thinking that copyrights, or capitalists trying to grab at this money and all this type of stuff. I'm not sure whether that is. I'm not sure whether, I never have. I've done music like that. I've always had a feeling it's not actually music that I'm making. It's other people's music that I've organised in a certain way. A bit like saying, if I made an album and on the front I put a Van Gogh and on the back I put a Rembrandt, they're not my paintings. I'm not the artist. They're still, just because I put them together in this collection, this album, doesn't mean that I have them. And I think there is a philosophical point here. Now, of course, all of this, it all means nothing because what we're arguing about is really what us human beings choose of how to think about it. At one point, we thought art was very specific, and then John Cage came out 72 years ago and made the opposite point. And that point he made was very useful at the time, and we would not have modern music making with all the sampling and sounds and all the stuff that's happened in there. None of that would have happened if John Cage hadn't have been part of the cultural force to push forward into that. But is the fact that at this point, and I believe we're at another cultural shift, I think everything feels very chaotic at the moment, would it be more useful to start to say to ourselves, that's all well and good, your drum beat and your loop and all this is all well and good, but it's not actually music. It's just occupying a space in the cultural discourse which is the same as a sound effect. or a ringtone, or the cuckoo come out and going cuckoo. And that there's a whole bunch of things that we can start to say actually make it art. And maybe the reality of John Cage ordering his musicians to sit at a certain point and make it happen in real time to an audience in real time. Because you've got to remember, when we invented recording, that shifted music. Up until then, right from the beginning of humans making music, music had always occurred in real time with a listener and a maker. Once we recorded, we upset that, and we haven't really understood the philosophical implications of this. Now, we are now at a point where we have AI, and it's there for everybody to access. I access it all the time. Recently, I created a short, which you can go and have a look at, which is the 10 greatest wigs in rock music ranked. So it goes through a bunch of things. And rather than have some rock music, and I thought it would be nice to have some sort of Kenny G, middle of the road Fusac on there, you know. And so I wrote all that in, and I got the one I wanted, and I stuck it up. And some guys came up and said, that's a lovely piece of music, and it was. But there's nobody playing on it. It's totally created by a computer using the words that I've put in. You can't tell the difference now. That's happened. Sounds like a real saxophone player, sounding like Kenny G. That's what it sounded like. And there is an argument that will be made that the person that puts the words in, i.e. me, is the artistic creator of that piece of music. And I would say, no, I'm not, because that is not a piece of music. And then we're faced with something as avant-garde and as way out as what John Cage, the point John Cage made, and I have now arrived at the conclusion that I never had when I started. And it is this, and it's quite a profound one, everybody. When John Cage made that statement, it was an artistic statement, wasn't it? It wasn't a statement about truth, it was a statement about aesthetics. Now, I am making the equal but opposite statement. I am making the antithesis to him, where he said this thing that doesn't sound like music is music. I'm saying these things out there, they sound like music, they walk like a piece of music, they talk like a piece of music, but are they necessarily a piece of music? Is all this stuff, is all this dance music and all this auto-tuned vocals, everything that we feel isn't quite what we expected. And the people that will clutch at a modern music, which is just because there's some semblance of a guitar and a drum kit on there, even though the production has dragged out any idea of the real performance, of the visceral moment of the musician and the listener, even that's been erased out of the process. People will grab onto that because they want something, they expect something from the music. Now, of course, the obvious argument against all this is, you're old, Andy, all your audience is old, kids have moved on, they like something else. And my answer to that is, yeah, they like it, right? But what they're listening to is not music. And we are faced then with the biggest, most powerful aesthetic, artistic, cultural claim that the postmodernist era made, which is that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And there is no concrete meaning to anything whatsoever. All right? And I wonder whether culturally we need to reset that a little bit. And I wonder which the very embodiment of this in this talk, which was that banana, the artwork comedian, that I was able to analyze in a very intellectual way. Maybe the truth is that has now just become a way of very rich people to invest in things that will grow in value and, you know, and all that, which is what fine art has become. It's been a place for you to stash, you know, it's better than gold, isn't it? If you can buy a Picasso or a Francis Bacon. I mean, because they just go up at some, you know, if some guy could tape a banana to a wall and in doing that create $6 million worth of hole in the economy, suck 6 million out of that into that place by doing that. That is what that's really about. And fine art is really about money. In the same way as the music we hear now is fundamentally about money. and the art has got lost, and the art is somewhere else, and the art could well be a generation of people coming around and going, yeah, we know what that is, it's great and you could enjoy it, but we're in a new realm now where we have to say what art is. We have to say that is art and that's not art, and there is an objective idea of what is good and bad aesthetically, which means what is right or wrong, which means we now have a basis on which to build our ethics going forward, right? And we come now to the probably the most avant-garde concept behind the whole of this channel, which is the fact that our ethics are rooted in what we think is beautiful or ugly. And it might be a time now to stop saying anything can be beautiful and go, no, we think this is beautiful, and then try and substantiate our reasons as much as we possibly can, which is what I've tried to do here on this video. Right, I think I have arrived at the end of this one. So, did I prove that a lot of modern music, all the stuff that's made by machines and AI music and all that dance music and all the stuff that's got nobody actually performing on it, is it actually music? And the answer, I think, is culturally, for the pragmatic and utilitarian use that art is at the moment, the best thing for us as human beings would be to say no.